Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Build 2014 session on user data management in Windows Phone 8.1. My name is Tony Pendolino. I'm a program manager at Microsoft working on the Windows Phone and the operating systems group. In addition to me speaking today, we'll also have a guest speaker, Wes Peter, coming on stage a little bit later. So, in user data for Windows Phone, we're going to talk about 3 different themes for how we access and manipulate user data on Windows Phone in version 8.1. The first of those themes is going to be richer access to user data. These are the cases where your application will be able to read from the data that's stored on the phone, whether that's the contacts or appointment data. The next theme is going to be getting things done with System UI. These are cases where we will allow you to accomplish scenarios efficiently and quickly in your apps, sometimes with just one line of code, where we provide the UI and the end-to-end experience for the end user in order to accomplish some sort of task. Those 2 themes will cover about the first half of the presentation today. Then the second half will go into deeper integration into core experiences. These are the things that we've enabled, which are brand new in Windows Phone 8.1, which will allow your app to deeply integrate into the experiences that Windows Phone is known for. So the first of the data types that I would like to talk about today are the user's contacts. And the first of the API sets is programmatic read access to the contacts database. This falls under the theme of the rich access to user data, where your application is able to read the contact store and know which contacts that your particular user already knows. In this case, we had first enabled functionality like this in the Windows Phone 7.1 SDK. However, we've updated that using giving you modern Windows runtime APIs in order to access this data, now with the full async and await model, which makes them super easy to use. You don't have to worry about registering callbacks or anything like that anymore. There are a couple different scenarios that you enable with programmatic read access. In some cases, you may want to display the user's contacts in custom UI. This could be showing maybe a visual representation of the user's contacts, or maybe sorting it on some sort of data like locale, which the Inbox People Hub doesn't do for you. Another scenario, which is very popular for mobile applications, is reading the contacts database to make connections. This might be the cases of messaging applications. You want to know which of the user's contacts are already known on your network. In order to do that, what you do is you read the contacts database, and you look for bits of information, whether that's an email address or maybe a phone number, and then you can register that with your server and understand whether or not that particular contact is already present on your server. Now, since this is personal information for the user, we do require that you register for a security capability when using these APIs. This is what informs the user that you're going to have read access to the contacts database. In addition to updating this for the asynchronous model of modern Windows C# APIs, this uses the new shared contact type that was introduced in Windows 8.1 SDK. So if you're writing an app that uses runs on both Windows Runtime Store app and a Windows Phone app, then this is the same contact object, and it can be used interchangeably from the direct access programmatic read access APIs, as well as things like the contact picker and the show contact card that we introduced in Windows 8.1 last year. These APIs will allow you to search for individual contacts based on email address, the contact names, or the contact's phone numbers. And furthermore, when we return this contact information to you, we return an aggregated contact. So in Windows Phone, we've always enabled the end user to be able to link their different contacts together from different accounts, whether that's Outlook.com or their Google accounts or their Exchange accounts. And that aggregated information shows up as a single person in the People Hub. And so when we return the information to you, what you get back is that aggregated information, which is the same as what the user is used to seeing in their contact card already. So the next area is the contact picker. This is still about contacts data, but this is under the theme of getting things done with System UI. Again, so what that means is this is enabling an end-to-end scenario for your application that is easily completed with just a couple lines of code. In this case, that's picking a contact from the System UI. So what you can see here in this screenshot is a list view of the user's contacts. You'll call an asynchronous API that allows you to bring up this list view, and then the user can select one or more of those contacts, depending if you enabled multi-select. This is great for scenarios such as invitation apps, where you want to invite multiple users to an event, or for messaging applications, where you want to send a message to one or more of the user's contacts. Some of the features here is that you can filter based on fields present. Depending on the type of information that your application needs in order to make these connections with the end users, we enable you to select only contacts that have email addresses or phone numbers or postal addresses. And this is the same as what was enabled in the Windows 8.1 SDK. So if you're writing those new universal apps, this is one of those APIs that you'll be able to call directly on both of them and enable this scenario. The next area is text messages. Here is another example of the getting things done with System UI. So again, an easy task that's easy to complete. So in the Windows Phone 7.1 SDK, we introduced the SMS Compose task as part of the Microsoft.phone.tasks namespace. And the SMS Compose task was one of the most popular tasks used. Actually, it was the most popular task of those used. Well, we wanted to make sure that when you're writing a Windows runtime application, you have access to the same functionality. So once more, this is an updated version of existing functionality. However, moved to the asynchronous model to make it easier to use. And the scenario is pretty basic, pretty simple. What it enables you to do is bring up the first-party messaging app with some stuff already filled out, including the recipients that you want to send the message to and the message body text. And then the user can press the send button and send off that message. This is great for situations where you have some sort of network where you weren't able to find the user's contacts in your network already, and you want to enable your user to invite those friends to your network. So maybe think of a social gaming application. Here's an easy way to send an SMS to new users and bring them onto your network. Next, along the same lines as the text messaging APIs, we have an email API. Once more, this is similar to what we had previously. However, finally, on Windows Phone 8.1, you can add an attachment when you're sending an email. So this was the number 4 requested feature on windowsphonedev.uservoice.com. And once more, we've updated this to use Windows Runtime APIs. And like I said just a moment ago, we allow you to attach files when you're composing that message. Any type of file type is supported. We don't do limits on the number of attachments or the types or anything like that. Now, you should keep in mind, of course, most email servers limit to around 10 megabytes anyways. So in order to enable your user to send this message, you should keep it under a sanitary limit there. And additionally, we do resize pictures for you automatically before they're sent in order to make sure that they get sent out properly. So I'm going to show a quick demo of how the contact pickers, the SMS Compose, and the email with the attachments will work, and just how easy it is to do this on Windows Phone 8.1. Bring this up. So I have just a very simple test app here. And we're going to deploy it to the device. And all it is here is just 3 buttons. And behind each of these, I'll show you the event handler for what happens. So the first is picking the contacts. We've got a breakpoint here. And this is the contact picker. Now, if you're familiar with using this on Windows 8.1, it's the exact same model. You can use the same code in either case. So we new up the windows.applicationModel.contacts.contact picker. We set a desired fields for the contact type. In this case, for this first example, I'm going to use address because I'll be using the others in the other examples. And then we call an asynchronous API here, and we await it, pick contacts async. So again, the magic of the await and asynchronous model is you don't have to worry about this sticking on the UI thread and bogging things down. That's all handled for you automatically without registering a callback. Then when we return, I'm just going to iterate through all the contacts returned, look at the different addresses that were returned, and then just write it out to the debugger. Probably in your app you'll want to do something with those addresses, but this is just for the sakes of the demo. So here's that contact list, as I said before. The user can scroll through, and all the contacts that have the addresses are presented here for the user. I can choose multi-select. I can tap one of the users. Here's a second user. In this case, this user has multiple postal addresses. So we'll select the one from Outlook, and we'll tap the check button at the bottom, and it's returned to the app. Like I said, normally we would do something, but here at the bottom of the debugger, which is going to actually be small, but there's the addresses that have been printed out. Really easy to use, and just a couple lines of code to enable that. In the case of SMS now, I just tap that Send SMS button. The first thing that we do is we new up what we call a chat message object. And we're going to go ahead and set the body for this, because we want to say, in this case, what we're doing is we want to tell them to see windowsphone.com, because we're really excited about the new Windows Phone, and we'd like them to be able to check that out. Then we'll do the same thing, calling up the contact picker. However, when we iterate through the results this time, instead of printing them to the debugger, we're going to add them to that chat message that we newed up just a couple lines before as a recipients. And the recipients just take in the phone numbers. So just add each of those to that. And then we'll call the show compose SMS message async API with that chat message, and that will be brought up for the user. So I'm going to continue, and the first thing we'll see is the contact picker. Once again, we'll do multi-select, and we have Darren and Desmond there. This time, Desmond only has one phone number associated with that particular aggregate, so there's no disambiguation shown there. I'm going to tap the check button. We're brought back to the app with that information, and then immediately the SMS window is shown with the Darren and Desmond populated as the different recipients, as well as the message that we wanted there. Then at the bottom here on the left, I can tap the button that says send, and there the message is sent out. Finally, we have the send email. So I just tap the send email button, and we're brought to the event handler here. Same as the chat message, what we do is we new up an email message object. In this case, we're going to set subject and body. And you're also able to set the other fields, such as the recipients, which we'll show in a moment, as well as high priority and things such as that. Then we'll run through the contact picker here. In this case, we want the field type of email so that the contact filters to only contacts with email addresses. We're going to add each of those recipients to the to line of the email message. You do also have the option for the CCC line or the BCC line. After that, what we're going to do is we're going to get the files that we want to attach to that email message. So if you were in Sean McKenna's talk just a moment ago, he explained how to use the windows.applicationModel, the storage APIs, let's call them. And in your app, you'll probably be pulling files from either some web server or maybe something that you're creating in your app, such as a photo or a PDF or maybe like a GPX file. In this case, for the demo, I'm just using some files that are stored in the app's storage from the installation. Here on the right, you can see this as part of the Solution Manager. So I'm going to get the folder that's associated with where those files are stored. And then I'm going to just create a list of those storage files and add each of those files from the application installed location storage. And then, just like I did with the recipients, I'm going to add each of those storage files to the email message as attachments this time. So we add the name, and then we add a stream reference to the file. Then we call the email manager, and we show compose new email async. Same thing that we did with the SMS, but we send that email message, or we're going to bring up the email app instead now. So we're going to continue. Now here's the contact picker once again. we're going to go with the same thing, multi-select, Darren and Desmond, tap OK. Then we're brought up the picker for the types of email accounts. We can tap on Exchange. And there it is, the first-party email experience with all the information filled out, the subject and the body, along with the attachments. In this case, 3 different Office documents attached, a doc, a Excel, and a PowerPoint. All right, going to switch back to the presentation now. And I'd like to talk about Calendar. So the Appointments APIs that we're introducing for Windows Phone 8.1. We did a lot of effort in creating a first-class appointment API set for Windows Phone 8.1. Part of the reason that we did that is that the new Calendar app that you've heard about this week that was enabled for Windows Phone 8.1 that we shipped is built on these same APIs that we're making available to store applications now. So the first of those that you need is going to be the rich access to user data. In this case, this is the programmatic read access APIs. This is what lets you read the user's calendar and accomplish different scenarios. Maybe that's displaying the calendar in unique ways that make sense for the end user, such as a lunar calendar or something other that's not covered by the first-party calendar experience. You can also read the calendar data in order to solve different scenarios. You can think of things where you might have traffic applications that you want to alert the user it's going to take them longer to get somewhere. Or you want to be able to schedule something. And you can programmatically read read the appointments data to find out when the user will have time available. Similar to the contacts APIs, we require a capability disclosure for the appointments APIs. If you're reading the user's appointments, then the user should make that decision on whether or not they're OK with sharing that information. Some of the new features that are different from what was previously available on Windows Phone 7.1 is that we now allow you to get the appointments across the multiple data sources and get the actual different calendars within those sources. So if you think about something like Outlook.com, you may have multiple Outlook.com calendars. You'll have your personal calendar. In my case, I have one for the Seattle Sounders. I might have a birthday calendar and a holiday calendar. And we allow you to read that and determine the same colors and hidden status as the first-party calendar application. Now, under the second theme of getting things done with System UI, we've enabled a whole bunch of different task type of APIs on Windows Phone 8.1. The first 4 of these are also available on Windows 8.1 that shipped last year. So these allow you to accomplish end-to-end scenarios around appointments. So the first of those is adding a new appointment for the user and allowing them to confirm whether or not they want to add that to the calendar. So you think of a case like maybe you have an application that's doing the registering for an event, like, say, Build 2014. When you pick a particular session, the application then can bring up the first-party UI and already populate the session name and the location and the date and time for you. And then you can just choose to save that to any of your calendars that you already have on the device. Then maybe this session was very popular. So what happens is that they decide to move it to a different room so that you have a little bit more space and everything. Well, now you can replace the appointment that was added previously. And how this works, if you're not familiar with the Windows 8.1 APIs, is when you first added the appointment, we'll actually return an identifier for you that allows you to find that same appointment again later. And this is an identifier that will actually roam across your different Windows devices. So that if you add it on your Surface tablet, and then later you get the update while you're on the phone right before the session, you can update that same appointment from either device. And then, since we're in San Francisco, maybe something crazy happens like an earthquake, and we have to cancel the last day of sessions. Well, we have the remove appointment for that case, where, again, you bring up a confirmation dialog, and the user can remove that same appointment using that same appointment ID that you had provided previously. And then the final one that we brought over from the Windows 8.1 SDK is the Show Time Frame API. In this case, we bring up the first-party UI, given a particular time and date and then a time span, and we'll show what's happening to the end user in that case. So the scenarios for this are if they want to see if they already have something scheduled in a particular time frame. Now, you could do that with the programmatic read APIs. However, and if you use the programmatic read ones, then you need to declare the security capabilities, and there's a lot more work, frankly, involved in using those. We try to make them easy as possible, but appointments are a complicated space. So if you use the show time frame, it's just one API call, and we'll bring that up for you very simply. Then we have two new ones that we added for Windows Phone 8.1 that were not available on Windows. And those are the edit new appointment. In this case, it's similar to the show add appointment, except for it allows the user to make edits to the appointment before saving it to the calendar. And then the show appointment details. In this case, you can navigate the user directly to an appointment that you had previously created using that same appointment identifier. One thing to note about these, all of these task-based action APIs, is I mentioned before that we allow you to roam these IDs across different devices. One of the limitations of most calendaring data sets and servers is that these IDs aren't guaranteed to be unique. One of the cases is, for instance, if you have a meeting that you share and you have both you and another person's calendar on your device, and those two people are invited to the same meeting, those will have the same identifier with them. So we actually have two sets of all of these APIs. One that uses these roamable IDs, and then if there does happen to be a collision, we show a disambiguation screen for the end user. However, if you're using the programmatic read access APIs and you're reading them directly, we also provide a version that uses local identifiers so that you can guarantee uniqueness for your application, and you won't never show that disambiguation screen. So in order to show a little example of how these APIs work in action, I'm going to introduce you to Wes Peter here. Wes is a test engineer on Windows Phone, as well as an application developer, and he has the Simple Calendar app, which is available in the Windows Phone store. Take it away, Wes.
Thanks. As Tony said, my name's Wes Peter. I work on the developer platform team. And not only do I work on the platform, I'm also a user of the platform. I like writing apps in my spare time. One of those apps, Simple Calendar, is a lot better on Windows Phone 8.1. If you've never written an app on the phone that needs to get the user's appointments, I'll fill you in on a couple options you have. So one way to get a user's appointments is you can look up online the different SDKs for different calendars. So Outlook.com calendar, Google Calendar, Facebook events, they all have different SDKs. So you can go online, look up how to use those SDKs, write some code to retrieve the user's appointments. You can write some code to store the appointments, write some code to sync the appointments, and then write some UI for the user. Say, give me your username and password. Don't worry, I'm just going to get your appointments. That's all. And then you write all that code, and there's another option. The second option is you can use the API that's built into the phone. So when I started working on Simple Calendar a little over a year ago, of course, I picked the second option. It's less code for me. It's a lot simpler for the user. They just launch the app, and their appointments are right there. So I did that. So this API is available starting with the Windows Phone 7.1 SDK and also in the Windows Phone 8 SDK. There are a few downsides to that API. There's an API for retrieving appointments, and there's an API for showing the add appointment task. But users want to edit and delete appointments. So that was a downside. And then another downside is private appointment details. The API returns the start time and end time, but it doesn't return the subject or the location or any of the details about the appointment. So, and lastly, another downside was when you request to get appointments for an account, it just gives you back all appointments. It doesn't distinguish between calendars, so a birthday calendar, a holiday calendar, you just get all the appointments back. So I'm happy to say, with the new appointment APIs that Tony's talking about on Windows Phone 8.1, all those issues are taken care of. So the users of Simple Calendar, as soon as they get the 8.1 update or they buy a new 8.1 phone, in the store, Simple Calendar, the 8.1 version is ready and waiting for them to install. And to update the app, it only took me a couple hours. And I'm actually going to show you the code right now. So let me switch over. OK. So first, I'll show you the code for showing appointment details. So I'm just going to hit F5, get this running, and then we'll hit our breakpoints. So on the first screen, this is the main page of Simple Calendar. The user's appointments show up in a month view, and then for each day that's selected down at the bottom, we just show the list of appointments there. So if a user taps an appointment, it's going to come into our code. This is the event handler for the tap. And so the first thing I did was I got my simple appointment object out of the data context of that item. So first, I'm going to request access to the appointment store. Now, if you declare the appointment capability in your app, you will get access to the appointment store. So I'm going to read all calendars from the appointment store. And then I'm just going to show the appointment details screen. Now, I have an if statement here. There are two types of appointments. There's a single event, and then there are recurring events, right? So if I just had a one-time appointment, this original start time property, it would be null. But the event I tapped on, as you can see, it's not null. So the event I tapped on is part of a recurring series of appointments. So I'm going to come down here. And then I just call this show appointment details method. And I'm just passing in the appointment ID. Now this is the local ID that Tony was just talking about. And then I also pass in the original start time. So I'm just going to hit F5. And then it shows the appointment details page. Now this is system UI. The great thing about this is I didn't have to write this UI. I could write a details page myself. But in this case, the user's probably familiar with this UI. If they've ever used the built-in calendar or any other app that calls this API, this is familiar UI to the user. And then from right here, they can edit or delete the appointment. If this was an appointment with attendees, they could reply, I'm running late. So it's nice because it's just taken care of for me. So if I hit back, it takes me back to my app. And then the other thing I'm going to show you is how do you retrieve appointments. So I'm going to tap on. Actually, I better set my breakpoint first. So I'm going to tap on the next day. I'm going to tap on April 5th. And when I do that, I'm going to come into my method that retrieves all the appointments. So I'm going to tap the 5th. And then this is, in my code, this is just a common refresh method. I use this anytime I want to get appointments. So again, we request access to the appointment store. In your code, you wouldn't want to continually request access. I'm doing this for the demo to show you what the code looks like. You would want to request access once, and then this object you would just store somewhere and then reuse it. But anyway, I request access to all the appointments. There's a few find options here. I'm just going to make sure that I'm not showing the hidden calendars. So if the user hides a birthday calendar, it's not going to get the appointments from that calendar. And then I'm just going to calculate my range length. Since I'm just tapping on one day, this is going to be a 24-hour range length. And then I call this find appointments async API. So I pass in the start time, the range length, and then the find options. And that returns me a collection of appointments. Now, if I have appointments in my code, I'll show you. So to integrate this into my code, I have a class already, the simple appointment class. And so I pull out a bunch of properties from the appointment object. I also pull out the calendar color and calendar name. So right here, I'm also going to go and retrieve all the user's calendars so I can pair up the appointments with the calendars. Each appointment, let me show you here. So each appointment has a calendar ID. So if I look at this appointment, you'll see there's a calendar ID. So I'm just matching up the calendars with the appointments. And then I'm just getting the calendar color, the calendar name, and then I add this to my list of simple appointments. So I won't iterate through each one. I'll just hit F5. And then you can see, so now I've selected April 5th, and my long list selector is now bound to the new collection of appointments. So that's it. I just wrote a few lines of code there, and I updated my app to Silverlight 8.1. And as a result, a lot of users will be happy. And it was pretty easy and straightforward. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Wes. Okay, like I mentioned, the first half there was about the rich access to the user data and then the getting things done. Now we're going to talk about the deep integration into first-party experiences. And the first of those is what has been the #1 request on windowsphonedev.uservoice.com, and that's programmatic write access to the user's calendar. If you're familiar with the APIs that we introduced in Windows Phone 8, we enabled you to create a custom contact store for your application. Now in Windows Phone 8.1, you can create a custom appointment store. This is an appointment store that shows up just the same way as appointments synced down from Outlook.com or Exchange. But you have full programmatic read and write access from foreground or background apps, foreground or background code for those appointments. So the different types of scenarios that you can enable for something like that is writing event data. Maybe you have a social network or some other event planning application. Well, this is easy for you to keep the user's calendar up to date, so you don't have to write necessarily entire entire UI and are able to show those events coming up. And the user sees those events alongside their other events in familiar places, such as the calendar live tile or the great new week view that we're showing here for Windows Phone 8.1. Or there may be a case where you want to sync appointment data from a server that is different from what's supported on Windows Phone 8.1. What we did here that we think is really neat, though, is that we didn't limit you to the details page that's available in the Windows Phone 8.1 calendar. You have the option, when you're writing these appointments into the calendar, to specify whether you want to use the first-party experience for the details page, or when the user is in this and they tap on an appointment, we'll actually link back to your application. So this does look similar to the first-party UI, but what we're actually in now is something called Meeting Pro that one of the developers on my team has been working on as a sample application. And here you can see you have a notes pivot, which is new for his application that allows you to add things like attachments or handwritten notes to a particular appointment. Furthermore, we will enable you to have different sharing access levels for your appointment data. Now, what that means is you can set your appointment data where it's hidden from other store applications or it's available to everyone. Now, of course, we would like you to always keep it open so great experiences like Simple Calendar can be enabled, but I understand that some of you have cases where that data needs to be protected from other applications. Then we also enable appointment change tracking so that if you have an appointment calendar which does show up in the first-party UI and you enable editing for those appointments, all these are options you can set on those appointments, then we'll provide you with change tracking information so that you can then sync those changes up to your server as needed. So let's show you a quick demo of how this looks in action. So first I'm going to run the Meeting Pro application. And what you see he did here is he created an agenda view, which looks similar to what was available in Windows Phone 8.0. You can scroll through the appointments, but this is using that programmatic read access, not the new write access APIs. What he enabled, though, is when you add a new appointment using the task, and then I choose which calendar I want to add that to. This last calendar down there where it says Meeting Pro and the orange one, it's kind of small, sorry about that. That's his calendar that he has full read and write access to. So I can tap on Meeting Pro, add a new event called Meeting Pro, save it to that calendar, and then I'm going to refresh the view, which will take us back to today. And there you see we have the Meeting Pro appointment there. Now let's go into here, and let's take this notes pivot that I was talking about. So he has the details page and the notes pivot. And this is in his UI for Meeting Pro UI. I can tap the edit button at the bottom, and I'll tap an attachment. We'll take an existing image, and we'll just tap one of these images here. And I'm going to save it. So now we have a meeting that has the notes on it already. So where this is interesting then, I think, is when we go back and we go into this first-party UI. So here you see the new week view for the calendar application, and we can scroll through. And here on Friday, April 4th, we have the Meeting Pro appointment. And when I tap on this appointment, rather than going into the first party, there we are directly back in the Meeting Pro. So you can think about where you can enable really rich experiences for this, whether you have sort of social networking type data that's around your events that you write in, or if you want to really like link together the people who were involved for something like a line of business application. All those can be enabled with your own UI, but you don't have to go through the work of providing the calendaring views, such as a week view and a day view. They're still using the first-party experience that they're used to, and it's integrated with all the other appointments on their device. Okay, next I have two more areas of rich or deep integration to talk about. In both of these cases, these are available for your Windows Phone Silverlight 8.1 apps only. So the first of those is online media. And in the case of online media, what we want to enable is allowing your apps to integrate into the user's photo hub in the same manner that OneDrive is enabled and Facebook is enabled on Windows Phone 8.1. So how this looks is that your application will get a tile right there alongside OneDrive. In this screenshot, you can see the Photo Agent demo that I'll show you briefly in a moment. Then, when the user taps on that tile, they'll stay in first-party experience, but they'll show albums that are available from your application. So your application has the option of either pre-populating those if it's already run, or if it hasn't run, we'll bring you to a login page. We'll bring the user to a login page in your application. Or we'll just activate a background task where your application can then populate these album views automatically for the user. Then the user can go into an album. And inside that album, we'll show them thumbnails, again from your application, but in first-party UI. And we'll bring them all the way down to viewing a single photo or video. At which point we show attribution for your application, enabling the user to link back to your application for an even richer experience, something unique to your network possibly. Or they still have all the power of the first-party experience where they can do things like share, or they can save it or favorite it like they're used to in the first-party UI. The types of scenarios that this enables is for any sort of network photo or video sharing service where you want those photos to show up in the one place where the user is used to looking for photos. We don't think that the user should have to go to 3 or 4 different applications when they want to find one particular photo. It should all be available in one place. And we believe that in Windows Phone 8.1, that place is the photo hub for all of the store applications and the existing photos on the phone. The final area we're going to talk about is another contacts API. In this case, these are called contact bindings. And this is what allows your app to integrate directly for the first time into the Windows Phone contact card in the People Hub. So previously in Windows Phone, the contact card was made up of a profile pivot, a what's new pivot that showed their social information, and a history pivot. Now we've added what we call a connect pivot. This is a case where your application can register for and show up as an opportunity to connect with an individual contact. When the user taps on your tile in the Connect pivot, we'll launch your application with an identifier telling you which contact it is. And you can bring them to a rich experience showing a deeper profile information, social networking information, maybe gaming interests, browsing music. There's lots of different opportunities that how you can connect with your contacts depending on what your type of application is. Another great scenario for this is something like Skype, where they can tap on the Connect tile for your application, and we can bring the user directly to the right chat card. So how this works is, rather than creating the contacts like was possible in Windows Phone 8.0 SDK, what you create are these bindings to contacts. And so you don't have to know like all the sort of Rolodex type information, such as phone numbers and email addresses. A lot of times you'll just have like one bit of information that lets you uniquely identify the users on your network. Now maybe that is the phone number. A lot of times that will be the email address, or maybe it's just a display name. So what we allowed you to do is just to take one or more pieces of those information like that and say you want to bind this remote identifier that you understand to this particular piece of information. So what that means is, say you provide an email address and you provide a remote ID that your server understands, which may also be the email address in some cases. Then we'll figure out which contacts that's associated with on Windows Phone, and if they're linked to other contacts, we'll automatically aggregate those into the single person, as Windows Phone does for you. And we'll provide a single tile for you on that contact's or that person's Connect pivot. Then you can customize that Connect tile by rotating multiple images through it and bring up a really great personalized experience for each of the individual contacts that a user knows that are also available on your particular network. So I'm going to show how these last two APIs work in practice. So the first of those is the Online Media API. And I'm going to launch the demo app first. And in both cases, these applications that I'm showing you here will be available on MSDN as samples. So the first thing in a lot of social networking, or a lot of your applications basically, you're going to ask the user to log in. So we're going to go ahead and do a login sample there. After the user is logged in, then we can just go to the Photo Hub, which in a lot of cases, users are going to have this right on their start screen. So this is prime real estate. And we're going to go into the Albums pivot. And there you see the online networks. So Facebook, OneDrive, and now your application can be there right next to the first-class experiences. So I can tap on the Photo Agent demo, and you'll see we ended up with a lot of the same covers. I assume you'll have different types of pictures in the different albums for the users. So here what happened was, this app has already populated this data. If you chose not to populate right away, as I mentioned before, we'll just launch a background task and say, hey, we need all the albums, the names, and then the thumbnails for them. And you can populate those in real time while the user is there. Then I can tap on one of these, and there's the album view. Still in first-party experience, but with your data there presented. And then I can keep on going in, drill down all the way into a picture. And here you see, if you're familiar with how Lens applications worked on Windows Phone 8.0, you'll see the same similar attribution here, where we can open the app in open that photo in that particular application. So I can tap on that link, and then there we've launched back into the app with a URI scheme that you can easily catch in a URI mapper in your application. We're going to include information like the action, the media ID, and the album ID, which are items that you actually presented. Oops. Sorry about that. There we go. Which are items that you provided in order so that you can identify that media later when the user is brought to it directly. Or if we go back to the Photo Hub, then we see we have all these familiar actions that the user is familiar with, such as share, edit, save, or favorite for your photos, for your networks. So the last demo here is for the contact bindings. And like I mentioned before, this application will be available on MSDN. What we have is it's going to just quickly create 3 contacts so that there are contacts in the database that it knows about. So I'm just going to tap on each of these real quickly and add them. So we have Terry Adams, Mark Hansen, and David Pelton. Now we're also going to simulate a login scenario. And what the application is doing now is it's taking that binding, that bit of information that it knows about these contacts, which in this case is an email address. And it's saying, creating a new binding, saying, I'm looking for the contact with this email address. I want this remote identifier that I understand associated with it, and then just save it. And after that saving is done, we can go back into the People Hub, and we can look for our different contacts. And there we see the contact binding sample shows up right there on the Connect pivot with the bindings already created. So it has David photo showing 1 of 2 right now. Should cycle through in a moment, but there it goes, photo 2 of 2. And then I can tap on that Connect pivot, and we're launched right back into your application. So if the user has the most important contacts for that particular user pinned to their start screen, this is the first place where they'll go to look how to interact with that user. Before, it was always calling or texting, or there was the post to Facebook link there directly, or the Skyping. Now all store applications have the opportunity to show up and provide those rich experiences that enable this personalized experience on Windows Phone. Okay, so today I talked about 3 different themes of user data access. Rich access to the user data. We talked about how the new contacts and the new appointment APIs, which are now Windows Runtime APIs, are available that allow you to programmatically read information about the user and make connections for them. We talked about getting things done with System UI. So we had the contact picker. We had all the appointment actions, which allow you to manipulate appointment data, and then sending an email with an attachment, as well as composing an SMS to send. And then finally, we talked about deep integration into the core experiences on Windows Phone. In this case, we had the People Hub integration with the Connect pivot. We had the calendar integration with programmatic write access. And then we had the online media integration for your photos and videos showing in the Photo Hub. So that's all that I have today. Please remember to fill out your evaluations for the session. And then I'm open to taking any questions for the last few minutes here.
Any plans for having date-time picker?
I'm sorry?
Any plans for having date-time picker? Date-time picker?
Date-time picker. I'm not familiar with the plans for that, unfortunately. Sorry.
And second question is, on my device, if I'm already logged into Facebook, is there a way we can directly integrate Photo Hub with the Facebook and not create an application which forces the user to go to that app, log in, and then go back to Photo Hub and see photographs?
So you're logged into an application,
Yeah.
you're saying, and then what's the next step?
So I go to Photo Hub and see a Facebook icon right there
Right?
without writing an app which forces the user to go and log in, like you created an app where you went and logged in and then went to Photo Hub to see the photographs?
Right, so when the user taps on that link, if they've not already logged in, we'll actually activate your app with a URI that tells you that they need to log in. Or depending on how your app can handle it, we'll launch it. So you set a parameter saying that this user needs to log in before they can access it. And so it'll still be a flow through the experience, and the Facebook app works the same way, where by declaring an extension in your app, it has to do with the install time of the application is what makes it show up in the Photo Hub. And so then your application can handle the login experience directly there. Is that?
Kind of.
Does that answer the?
Kind of. Actually, I was thinking like on my phone right now. I have Facebook already. I'm signed in. I click on Facebook icon and I can see the posts and pictures. And then I go to Photo Hub, then I don't see my Facebook pictures right there, right? So is there a way to directly have both of them talk to each other?
So you want the photos to show up in like
In
the photos that are saved on the phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you would use the photo library APIs in order to write photos into the user's favorites or into the camera roll or into those types of locations. So this is specifically about photos that are stored somewhere on some other server that's based for your network, where you don't want to dump, maybe if the user has gigs and gigs of photos on your network, we don't want to dump them all onto the phone and fill it up.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
But yes, yes, the photo library APIs would enable that scenario.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Hello. You just showed the sample code for doing some I/O on the phone where you attached a few files into an email. We're talking about universal applications a lot these days, and I'm new to Windows RT development. How similar is the I/O API in the desktop mode compared to the mobile mode?
So for Windows runtime applications, the storage APIs are all mostly the same. So those are the Windows, yes, the Windows storage APIs. I'm not thinking of the namespace, but that's good? Okay. The email attachment API, though, is not available at this time on Windows.
Yeah.
So you'll access the files in the same way, but you won't be able to compose up an email message to send to the
But
end
what
user.
about restrictions and stuff? Of course, in a computer, you could do a lot with I/O, access any place, wherever you want, if you have the right permissions. Is it the same on phone? I would think not so.
Yes, it's all the storage APIs are aligned in that you set permissions to whether you can read the user's like media library, their photo library, and then you use those same capability declarations.
Okay.
And then we have a shared application manifest where you declare those,
Yeah.
and that applies to both your phone application that's built and the Windows runtime application that's built. And then you're able to access the same types of libraries on either set of devices.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Hi. Is there any plans to have an account API? So if you have a Facebook, a Google account, and so forth, and have it as an account picker. So if I have an app that wants to use your account credential from another, like a Facebook, I can use that to sign into my own app.
So I can't comment on anything that we have planned here, but I believe there's some of this enabled in Windows Phone 8.1. Yes? You guys, yes, okay. So there's the web authentication.
Use the Facebook SDK.
Right.
There isn't a general purpose account manager function.
So what he was saying there is that with the Facebook that they introduced in, I believe it was around September or October timeframe, they enabled to doing sign-on applications through their app, and you do that by launching their app directly and requesting a sign-on token through their account flow. But then there is also a general application sign-on model that is similar to what was enabled on Windows previously.
Right, the web auth broker.
The web authentication broker, which allows you to access OAuth-based accounts that are set up on the phone.
Right. Okay, so that's available in 8.1?
Yes.
Thanks.
Another question on the, I guess it's the camera task. I know it's not exactly what we've all been talking about. I've got a line of business app and I want to take a photo of the mouse because it's faulty. That's ending up and staying in the camera roll.
Okay.
Is there any way of getting rid of that?
This is on existing Windows Phone
Yeah.
8.0 hardware. I honestly don't know, sorry.
Because yeah, I want to take it and submit it. I'm not interested in carrying it around with me.
Okay. So you're taking a photo with the existing camera app or with
Yeah.
the Lens app?
No, just the existing. I'll talk to
Okay.
this guy. Thanks.
All right.
Hello. One question on the contacts integration. So that tile that appears on the contacts hub, how much can you customize it? I mean, from the application.
Right.
That's one thing. And how much can the user change it as well? Is it possible to make it like wide or has to be in that size?
Right, so for the application customization, there is the account string, the name that you would like associated with the contacts. So you get one line there for customization. Think of things like usernames or handles. And then you get to rotate through the different pictures. So you have the 3 different pictures that you can update. Now, they are just pictures, so you can really customize those as much as you want to, right? And as long as you're willing, but you can't do it through like an XML format or anything like that.
Okay.
And then for the user customization, there's no changing of sizes.
Okay. And can the user unpin them?
I think so. Let's find out. So there is unpinning, and then there's also one additional thing that I didn't really go into here. And let's see. Yeah, so you can long press on it and remove. You get a context menu pops up. Additionally, you can set your application to handle something that's called manual bindings. And so let's think about a case where your application wants to enable connecting to new people through, let's say you have a messaging network, and you were able to find some people on the phone that when you bound to, because you have their contact list, right, on your network, and you created bindings for everybody in their contact list, but there were some people that weren't included there. So the user can choose to add a new application that's registered for this extension, in which case we load up your tile then on that connect pivot. And then when the user taps through that, we launch through to your app and say, hey, this is a new binding that the user wants to create. And then we provide the information about the user so that you can figure out what you need to know about it, whether that's a phone number or an email address. And then you can create that binding for that user and then customize it.
Oh.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much.